Yeah, we're recording.
Excellent. Cameras are live. So, welcome to the Set Free Speech podcast, the show where faith, recovery, and personal growth intersect. I'm your host, Eli Rivera. I'm joined by our co-host, Anthony Hinojosa.
Yes, sir.
And I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey of transformation and spiritual discovery. So, Anthony, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired today. I'm having a hard time managing my sleep schedule. It's all over the place. I have a dog at home that likes to sleep on my bed and, annoy me in the middle of the night. And by her moving, I'm a light sleeper. I figured that out pretty early. Pretty late in my life. So being a light sleeper isn't necessarily helpful, but I am managing fine. I'm just looking extra tired. That's all.
Okay.
But other than that, life is fantastic, and I'm really blessed. How about you, man? How's your life?
I'm doing good. Also, sleep management is important for me, and time management, which we'll touch on in a little bit.
Yeah.
But as I'm filling up my plate with things that I need to get done in life, I'm also now working on plugging recovery, making sure recovery stays at the forefront.
Yeah.
But also making sure that I'm effective and efficient in everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that brain power that I'm focusing on, those, like taking the time to focus on those things, is interesting. It's interesting. So now I feel like I'm really busy, but also really productive.
Yeah.
So I feel really good about that.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, this is proper balance when it comes to those types of things, right?
Balance. What is that word?
Oh man, who is it? Trina, Chief's daughter. Yeah. She can't stand that word. She hates that word. She's like, I don't believe in balance. That's how much she hates it. She gets to the point where she says, I don't believe balance exists.
Well, we're addicts, It's like we're all in or we're all out, right? And it's hard to maintain that balance. But yeah, it's one of those things that I'm working on right now. So, but first, let's start off with the subjects for today.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and touch on the differences between sobriety and recovery. Then we'll talk about time management and recovery, and then move into principles before personalities. So,
I like that.
Anthony, we were talking before this started briefly, and you mentioned differences between sobriety over recovery and recovery. So, please elaborate.
So, I've mentioned to you before, most people know this, that I came into this world of recovery about 6 years ago. I'm coming in as a normie. I don't really have, I don't struggle with addiction. In fact, I've never done a drug in my life, and I've had about 5 sips of alcohol in my life. And so I stay away from it. It's not really my bag. But this world of recovery has really kind of shifted my mindset about how it is that I see growth and success and movement and even the way that I see God. And so it's been interesting to be able to kind of like be in this world and pick up like the words that people use, the certain vocabulary that people have about how they explain themselves and their lives. It was weird and different for me to walk into an AA meeting and everybody label themselves an addict. I just didn't understand that, and over time I began to understand kind of the tone, if you would, of what people are caring about themselves. And what I do find interesting inside of this world of recovery and addiction is that just like the church world, it kind of gets divided into pieces, and you hear people saying this over that, and this is better than this, and all kinds of different things between the different types of meetings, and even in the same exact programs. In the same exact programs like in AA, you have dividing lines of what people deem to be more important than others, and how fast you can do the steps, and how slow you should do them, and what does it mean to have a sponsor, and what does it mean to like take what serious, and how many meetings you should go to, and all kinds of things like that. And semi-recently have I been hearing a lot more about this concept of recovery being better than sobriety, or recovery being more important than sobriety, or recovery being the only thing that it is that we need, not sobriety. And so it's been interesting hearing those words being tossed around and the understandings behind them, but it's starting to gain more traction, which I think, depending on how you understand those two words, is actually a really good thing. And so have you ever heard anything like this before, like the differences between the two?
Not the differences between recovery and sobriety. I have never actually delved into that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, if I were to ask you the question, like, what do you think sobriety is? What would come into your mind?
Sobriety just means not having any mind-altering substances in your body, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I guess now that you asked me, and I'm diving into the thought, it would be that recovery is the process of aligning our will with God's, right? That's what the steps are designed for.
Yeah.
And then sobriety would just be, I guess, the person white knuckling it and just not working on recovery.
Yeah.
And just being sober.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you say that, because I say this to people as often as the subject comes up, which is that people that are sober, I've been sober for 34 years and I didn't get really anything out of it. And I know all kinds of other people that are sober and they don't do anything with their lives. And I know people that are, I've heard about people that are in a coma and they're sober and they're not doing anything with their lives either. And so when you see people that prioritize this idea of being sober, it literally is just kind of status, right? A status is, I don't do this.
Right.
It doesn't tell you what you do. It tells you what you don't do.
Right.
And what you don't do isn't necessarily as interesting as what you do. And so when people put on a very high pedestal sobriety, it's very interesting to see that happening, because at the very early state of recovery, just being sober is like a miracle within itself. It's like, that's why somebody can come up and say, oh, I've been sober for a week, and you're going to get a round of applause, because we all understand that's a very difficult thing to do.
Very difficult.
You don't just wake up like that. You very much have to work hard to be able to do that, especially if your life was given to addiction for such a long time.
Right.
And so sobriety is a beautiful thing, but sobriety is only kind of like step one, like step one into moving towards what it is that you want to do with yourself and what it means to actually recover. So I find it to be important to understand kind of like, okay, so now that you have sobriety, now that you stopped destroying your life with like mind altering substances that drag you into random directions. Now that that's not happening, what are you now doing? And I think that's what recovery is all about. I think recovery is recovering an opportunity to do something. And so where I've heard people say before, recovery is, what we're doing in recovery is recovering a life that we once lost. Ooh. Now, I have a hard time digesting that, mainly because I know a lot of people that have been in addiction since they were like 12 years old. What life are you recovering by that point? You haven't really built anything for yourself. You were a kid when you started. Right. So I don't think that's universal. And I have a problem with anything that's being said that can't be taken universal. Right. If it must be true, it must be true for everybody. And so somebody like myself, who sees myself in a world of recovery, well, how do I fit in your world of recovery if I'm trying to, catch what it is that I've lost in my life? I've had my life and I just haven't done anything with it. I think that what it is that we're doing in recovery in total is we're trying to recover an opportunity. And the opportunity is to be able to see where can I go from here? There have been so many things in my life that have held me back from doing things because they've been distractions. And so they've stopped me from being able to have the opportunity to do something interesting with my life. And so instead of being able to say, I want to go do this and want to do that, these things have been holding me back. Codependency, pornography, anything of the sort have been holding me back from doing that because I'm too busy with these other distractions in my life, including jobs and all kinds of other things that can distract you. Well, people in addiction, they very much can be in a place where they have a very specific distraction that is like out of its way, really kind of like dragging them back from having an opportunity to keep a job, keep your relationships going, and all these other things. So to me, it's not necessarily about regaining a life that you lost. It's about having the opportunity to gain a life that you never could have had. And that's what they say in the rooms, to have a life beyond your wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And so it's not really about going backwards and gaining something. It's about going forwards and gaining something, a very impossible something, if you would. And I think that that's very, very interesting concept to me. And I believe that I am trying to live in that life. I'm trying to live in a life in which I'm recovering an opportunity to do something bigger than myself currently.
That's awesome that you say that, because the other day I was actually, even before this topic was being brought up, I was wondering, like, why is it called recovery? What am I I understand that I'm recovering from the amount of time, but I didn't think of it like that. So recovering an opportunity, I love that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense. Now, when I explain it to someone, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, go for it. Because I think what's important is that we're constantly spreading what it is that we're actually doing as a group of people, right? And we got Zoe recording our stuff over here. It's super awesome. I'm going to have you stay on this side. You're coming into my shot, Zoe. But again, when we start realizing and trying to figure out what it means to recover, to get to that point, it's just like we've realized how much we've lost in our life based off of our distractions and things that keep us away from real life, if you would, that it's important to understand, well, if I cut out that part, there's still a hole there, right?
Yes.
What am I filling that hole with now? And that's why the idea of sobriety is just removing something, but it's not adding anything. That's why the only thing that's added there is an opportunity, or say an empty space to say, now what do you want to fill this in with? Now we've seen plenty of people that get sober and they put nothing in there, and how miserable they are.
Yeah.
Because by that point, the only thing that was making them happy was the drugs and the alcohol and being high and being drunk, and it's like that was what keeping me happy. Now that that's gone, it's like this empty hole, and they're like, oh, well, I have the job, I have decent relationships. I come to the meetings. I quote all the things that I have to out of the big book, but I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I think by that point, you're like, I don't think you recovered anything. I think that you got the opportunity to do something and you still didn't go anywhere with that, which is kind of sad if you think about that. It's like somebody being given $1 million. You work really hard to get $1 million, and then you don't know what to do with it. It's just like you're just still at the same place, doing the same thing, and you're not really happy, and you're not really spending any of that hard work, hard-earned cash. And I think that's what kind of happens in most of our lives, is we get opportunities to do something big, and we don't do anything big. We just kind of stay exactly where we're at, which means that we just kind of spent a lot of time working really hard to be able to get rid of something, and then doing nothing with that open space. Yeah. And I just think that it's unfortunate that people have that certain mindset, and I had to make sense of that as I came into this world, because I really did want to fit into this world to where, like, well, where am I in this? Because it feels as though I fit in. I just don't know how. It's when I started understanding this idea of recovery, because sobriety for a long time would be like, oh, I've been sober for this long. I'd be like, I've been sober for 30 years. Like, I had to deal with the emotional state of handling whenever emotions came up. I didn't run from them. I just kind of dealt with them. And so I didn't have that full on, can I just cut out of this thing? I didn't have a version of that was that big, that was like totally can take me out of those situations. I had to cry. I had to sit there and deal with the emotions. I had to be angry. I had to talk with people. I had to express myself. I had to do all those things over the years, but it still didn't really give me everything.
Right.
And so, like, when I think about, like, the idea of sobriety, it's like, I'm sober, but I didn't do anything with that sobriety. Well, how do I get to that point where I can do something with my clear-mindedness and my opportunities? And that's why I look out into the world of anybody outside of this world of recovery, the normies out there. A lot of them are doing nothing. In fact, most of them are doing nothing. And I think I mentioned this to you before, a story before, where I was working at a rehab, and the guy was sober for about 6 months, and he's sitting there watching Netflix, and he says, he gets frustrated, and he says, oh, what do normies do, man? I've been sitting here watching TV like all day long. What do normies do? And I looked at him and I said, they do that. They sit down and watch TV all day long. They don't do anything with themselves. I'm not asking you to be a normie. In fact, I don't think it's a good idea for you to try to emulate that. I think that you should understand that you have an opportunity to be able to do something so much bigger than that, because you understand where you are emotionally, where you are mentally, where you are spiritually, and a lot of people are not aware of those types of things. And people in recovery happen to completely have slingshotted way beyond most people in general, because they're not going out of their way for the education like that.
Yeah, and just to talk on that, I actually think I know why, right? And it's very important for in my case. In my case, I'm very cognizant as to why I understand recovery a little better now at this age. And it's because I had to go through a really tough time of getting sober. I got sober. I was sober for like a year, 9 months. 9 months at a time, right? But I was a sour sober. I was angry. I was like that guy, like, what is a normie's life like? I just get a good job and lose weight. And
seems boring.
Yeah, what else is there, right? But I had to go back into addiction, right? Go really deep into deep trenches, right? And now that I came back into recovery and I actually understood that I had an opportunity, and also like experience what recovery was like, community, not just being alone. Now I appreciate the opportunity. It's not just, first it's understanding that there is an opportunity, and then it's learning how to appreciate the opportunity. And to do that, I think you have to go through the tough times.
It's very true.
So I think that's why it all kind of clicked for me this time around. Or it has so far.
And I think it has to, because by that point, you do make the choice. You have to be able to ask yourself, do I want to be the guy who's sitting in the corner over at the AA meeting that's sitting with 10 years and he says, oh, my name's Bob, 10 years, and you just got to keep on showing up, and he looks miserable, and you're looking at him, it's like, is that what my life looks like in 10 years from now? And whenever I look at those people, like, these people look miserable, those people specifically, people look miserable. Why can't this be fun? Why can't this be exciting? It's just like, who stopped us from being able to have fun with our lives? All of a sudden it was just like, just be responsible, and that's it. And like, as long as you're responsible, you're not causing chaos to everybody else, and that's great. To me, I feel like that's selling ourselves short. It's, don't be a terrible person. It's like, all right, like, let's work on that. And so then you figure out how to not be a terrible person. All right, sweet, I did it. I'm not a terrible person. It's like, all right, great, that's good enough. And you're like, is that good enough? Because I feel like there's more to life than just not being something. Isn't life about being something else, like being something big, being something bigger than yourself? And so maybe it's not just about avoiding being the worst person, but trying to be a great person amongst yourself. What does that look like for yourself? Are you really living to your full potential? Do you understand what you can accomplish within yourself? Do you even understand what it means for you to be able to have purpose in your life? If it's just getting a job and not being a menace, that sounds like a boring life to me.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't sound like purpose. It sounds like you're just one of everybody else. And if that's what recovery is all about, there's no doubt why people keep on relapsing, is because they're like, this is way more boring than what my life was before.
Right.
And when you look at those types of things, you're like, well, as a world of recovery, what are we selling to those that are the newcomers? If we're selling to them that, oh, your life will be boring, or if you get sober, then you can have a car and you can have a girlfriend and you can have a house, I don't know, I still feel like it's pretty shallow. Like, that's not really life. That still is selling what everybody else is selling out there, because there's a lot of people out there that can be closeted alcoholics, and they can still have those things, and it won't be so terrible, but they still will feel miserable. There's so many people out there that are not alcoholics and drug addicts that are hitting their midlife crisis, and they have everything. So I don't think it's really about gaining these real physical, materialistic things, as much as it is understanding what your purpose is. And that's what I think recovery is. It's like, it's tapping into, what does it mean to have something bigger than just you're sober?
Right.
What does it mean to be able to tap into what purpose means? And obviously, I can't get away from the fact that if we're talking about purpose, we're talking about God. And by that point, it leans into it so heavily. And this is the reason as to why I think that any kind of program would be always leaning towards people going towards their spirituality, and specifically towards God, if you ask me. And once you get people connected with God, it becomes this thing where it's like, all right, now lean heavy into that, because by that point, it's not God just telling you, hey, stay sober. Trust me, that's such a small portion of the Bible. There's so very few scriptures that tell you stay sober, stay clear-minded. Very few scriptures, because it takes us time to talk way more about unity and community and love and connection and gentleness and patience and all kinds of other things that to God is way more important. To him, he's a full-blown contrary action kind of guy.
Right.
It's like, let's not focus on the problems. Let's focus on what the solutions are. And that's so much more fun. It's so much more interesting to be able to test out what it means to love somebody and to talk to somebody and to care for somebody than it is for us to sit here and mope around about what our problem is. And so when the 12 steps or any kind of program that gets you sober, what it does is it teaches you how to stop doing something. But it doesn't necessarily teach you how to do something, not in practice. Because in all reality, inside of those rooms, what you're doing is you're saying, we're going to get sober, and then we're going to teach other people in the same place how to stay sober. And a lot of it having to do with don't, not start. Because in so many different ways, it is, don't do this. You have resentments, right? Stop having resentments, right? You'll make your amends because you got to get that off your plate. Work on your character defects. Stop doing that. All that stopping is not necessarily telling us where we should be going. Now, obviously, in the depths in between, reading between the lines, you'll find out that, it's telling us contrary action. We should start practicing some other things. But the environment isn't necessarily trying to get us to do that too much. And that's why when I go into these rooms, you can see it. It's harsh, if you would. A lot of it is really bleak. A lot of it is really kind of like, just stop it and knock it off. And newcomers, you need to shut up and just do the thing, But there doesn't feel like there's a lot of life. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of excitement. It doesn't feel like we're selling anything that is exciting and purposeful. And that's why being able to say, come to the Magic House on a Sunday night. Sunday night Magic House is very different from any other meeting that you'll ever go to. And I think the reason why is because we're not necessarily just sitting and talking about the issues. Right. We're talking about what life can offer. And it has a lot to do with the music and the connection and the people and the love and the Jesus and all those types of things are important for us, because we see that as this is what I'm living for. You didn't answer that question. It's like, what kind of, I'm causing issues. All right, this is how you stop causing issues. Great. Well, the second question should be, and people I feel like are not asking, are what am I living for? Which is just another way of saying, what do normies do? What am I living for? What's my purpose? If we're not giving the answers through our lives, through our examples of saying I love my life, not because I can list off a bunch of things that I have, but I can tell you from the depths of my heart that I feel as though I have a purpose and I'm smiling and I love my life and everything is great and I'm just living in peace. Those types of things really sell people. That's what they want. They want to know, what do you have that I want? It's not just, oh, you're not in as much pain as I am. No, farther than that, bigger than that. What is it that you have that I want? And I think it's a slow step-by-step process. Because to be honest, it does start off with, I'm just trying to not be miserable anymore. Once you get out of that, it's just like, okay, I'm not miserable anymore. That's great. High fives, and everybody's really happy about that. But then eventually, it usually happens with people about a solid year, 2 years in the recovery. And that's happened. Many of my friends have gone through this, especially 2 years. Once at 2 years, they're like, I feel like I've plateaued. I feel like I don't know what should be next. They got used to the growth, and got addicted to the growth and the growth and the growth, and the next milestone. And it's like, all right, your milestones are over. Because now it's all about just being able to retain peace. How are you going to do that? And a lot of that has nothing to do with going back to the rooms. A lot of that has to do with going out of the rooms and going and experiencing life and figuring out what life has to offer from that point. And it's interesting, again, seeing people digest those certain types of concepts only with time. And then there's certain people that understand it and certain people that haven't understood it yet. There are people that have been in the rooms for half a year and they will be gung-ho about this idea of you have to be going to meetings 7 times a week. And there are people that don't go to the rooms at all, and they're saying I'm living the best day of my best life possible, but they're still lacking some sort of structure. It's interesting because by a certain point, nobody seems to have the right answer. People with long time, people with zero time, people with little time, people with all time, program, no program. Nobody seems to have the actual answer because everybody's still screwing up. So it's not necessarily about like right and wrong. It's more so about where are you heading. What is the goal? What are you trying to achieve? If it's just sobriety, congratulations, you already got it, brother. Like you did it. Like you're done.
Right.
So hang up your hat. You're done. Your life is over. You have nothing else to live for. So what are you talking about? I got things to live for. What is that? That's what recovery is about. What are you living for? Right. What is the thing that you're looking forward to on a daily basis? If it's just an opportunity to be able to live, just to breathe again, you ask me, it's a boring life. And you're no different than the normies out there who are doing nothing with themselves. You'll have a midlife crisis, guaranteed. And this is the reason as to why most people end up relapsing, because they have nothing to live for. And that's why it becomes this question in recovery, especially, well, what do you have now? I have an opportunity. Wonderful. You used to not have an opportunity. Now you have an opportunity. Now, what are you doing with that opportunity? Right. And if you don't know, it's probably a good time to start asking yourself, what is it that I'm living for by this point?
Yeah, no. I definitely have asked myself that, but I also know that I love people. Like I love humans, like hanging out with them, being around them. Yeah. So when I was isolating, and that's not the same for everyone, some people just don't like being around people, but I do, right? Yeah. So I know that when I'm around people, or I make people feel better, or I help them out with something, or I can help them maybe, I don't know, like I just helped 2 students in my business class put together their resumes because I know because of the failures of my past, right? That makes me feel happy. Yes. Because I had to go through that trial and error so that I could have a testimonial to help these kids. And it's the same thing in everything. I had to go through that testimony, right? I had to go through the test so I could have a testimony so I can evangelize what I've gone through to help other people. Yes. And I like to put these scenarios in my head, like right now, Michael is 18 years old. He's like, this is how I like to think of it. Or, he's eating dinner with his family and, he's struggling in life and maybe he gets into addiction. And 5 years from now, only 2 things will happen. 5 years from now in his addiction, he's going to decide to go to an AA room or a recovery center or a recovery speech. And I have two options. I can focus on working on myself so that the day that we coincide and meet together, either I am in recovery doing all the things that he wants so that he can be inspired when he sees me, or I do nothing now and he never gets to meet me. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that could be a Susan, you could play whatever scenario you want. Yeah. But I like to think like that because then it motivates me to like become a better person so that the moment I do meet that Mike or I do meet that Susan, I'm able to inspire them to be a better person. Yeah, and that's important. I think that's one of the biggest responsibilities that we have as individuals. That's what I mean about like selling. What are you selling? Right. If, again, you're selling just the next stage in your life, there's a lot of people out there that are sober, right? There's a lot of people that are sponsors to me that shouldn't be sponsors. But that's because what they're selling is literally just, this is how you be sober. Yeah. Just call me every day and we'll talk about the steps and stuff like that. And that's as far as their sponsorship and their leadership goes. But again, that's what the sponsee needs. Like all I need right now is for somebody to get me sober. I'm not looking for anything more than that. Either that's based off of ignorance or that's based off of the fact that they're not really shooting for anything bigger than that. Now, most of the time it's ignorance. People are just looking for sobriety. I'm just trying not to use and drink anymore. That's it. It's like, oh, that's admirable because, you're kind of a pain in the butt because you're constantly like high and drunk all the time. So yeah, it'd be great for everybody. It'd be heading in the right direction. Yes. But once that's achieved and it's understood how to stay away from that, because you have the steps and all these pieces to it, right? After that, it's like, okay, so where are you going now? The examples that it is that you set for yourself is, at one point, you're an example for what it means to be sober, right? At another point, it's going to end up being, you're an example of what it means to be a smart businessman, influential in one way or another when it comes to that. Another time will be your leadership is very much going in the direction of
what it means to love people, what it means to connect to people. And then maybe somewhere in there, what it is that you represent is something to do with recovery. I'm sober. I've been sober for blah, blah, blah. But this guy over here, Eli, he represents something a little different. And I think that's recovery. I want what he has. By that point, you are always going to be representative of what you're already doing, right? What are you doing? At a certain point, you have to ask yourself, what am I building towards? What's like the ultimate goal? And by that point, though, is when you begin to understand what it means to, because I believe that all of this sounds daunting, because it feels as though like it's just like it was enough for me to just stay sober.
Seems so far away, right?
Yeah, that too. It just feels like it's so far away. One, it felt like it was a lot because it's just like staying sober felt like a extreme thing to do. You're starting to now talk about things that feel as though they're like 10 steps down the line.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, well then how are you building towards or away from what it means to have a recovered life? Time management has a lot to do with that.
Ooh,
the way that it is that you look at your life and what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you're paying towards, what you're investing to, not investing to, all that stuff has a lot to do with it. Because there are people, again, that do a lot of one thing or nothing of something else. Yeah. And I have stories on both ends of people that are successful and people that are failing. Right. And it really isn't as cookie cutter as people would think that it is. And because I just don't think it's as binary as that. Because I think we're all so different. We all need discipline, but what that looks like has a lot to do with what we're attracted to, I think, and how it is that we're going to grow. But time management I think is a big piece of that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on today, time management, and then also kind of like, when is too much meetings and NA meetings and AA meetings and Bible studies, when is too much, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
I know that the political answer would be, it's never too much. Do more. You can do more, right? Dave Goggins. But like, when is it too much? Because, for instance, I'm in IOP, right? Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays I go to alumni meeting. And that Monday through Thursday is 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., right? And so I'm in a meeting there. Then I have my Wednesday DUI meeting. Yeah. Then I have my Thursday, house meeting. Yeah. Then I have Friday. So it's like morning and afternoon. It's like, okay, I'm very focused. I'm working on myself. I promise you. Yeah. But at one point, I have to start to delegate how I'm managing my time because I also want to build a business. I also want to build this podcast. I also want to build my knowledge and education in school. Right. So it's like, but then they tell you, recovery's got to come first, which I completely agree. Yeah. But also, like, when is too much, right? Right. Balance. I hate that word, like you said. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
I think it's an interesting subject because by that point, I believe that recovery ends up turning into programming specifically. Programming ends up turning into something like school. Okay. And it's an activity to be a part of. It's part of your life, but it exists, as much as it exists as part of you, it still exists outside of you. Right. And I think that's why it turns into something that feels like you have to balance. I believe that that's different than saying faith and purpose in God. There's a reason as to why, like, whenever anybody's talking about recovery and sobriety or anything of the sort when it comes to addiction and stuff, I'm trying to point them towards God every single time, because once they have that relationship with God and that's established and it's free flowing, then by that point, the reason as to why people tell most people that are early in sobriety and recovery, hey, you got to hit meetings as many times as possible. It doesn't matter how tired you are, you got to go anyway. Now, I believe that when it comes to churches too. I don't care how tired you are, you got to go, because that's a lot to do with accountability and where your mind's at and everything. But there's a certain point in which your relationship with God is solid enough in which you're not bailing out so you can stay away from God. Right. You're bailing out because you need to sleep, because you're burning at both ends. You're a really busy individual. You got a lot of things going on. You recovered the opportunity and you are taking advantage of that opportunity. Well, the ability to be able to stay home is actually it's a great piece of a great resting time, right? But the fear is that depending on where your recovery is at and how strong you are, when you do stay home, what do you think relaxing is? What do you think rest means? So many people that are early in the recovery, rest is synonymous with using. And to be able to rest is dangerous because as they say, the idle hands is the tools of the devil. When you are idle, chances are you will snap towards what it is that makes you comfortable. And that's not just addiction. That's not just substance abuse. That's pornography. That is hitting up certain websites. Sometimes it's spending money. Any idea of relaxing. Sometimes it's slothfulness, being able to just sit around and do nothing. And I don't know if you've ever felt this, because I know that I have, is that when I sit there and I'm like, today I'm just going to rest. I'm just going to watch some TV. I'm just going to relax. It turns me off to everything else I know I have to do, and I turn on the procrastination pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And so my idea of rest is not necessarily controlled. What rest is to me by that point is just, again, it's just me allowing myself to go into my pleasure and into my heathenism, if you would. And so that's harder to gauge out when you're early in your recovery. You're not as strong into what your understandings are. Now, I believe you have to test it out and see where you're at.
Yeah.
Test it out and see, like, where do I really go when I think about rest, when I talk about rest? Am I actually sleeping? Am I doing something productive? Praying, meditation, going for walks, something that's actually healthy for me? Or am I just staying home and eating chips all day and watching porn and playing video games and doing nothing with my life? Now, when I think about these things kind of stacked up, you can see and understand why people are scared of people not showing up. Because it's like, if you're not showing up, what do you do? Do you know enough about yourself yet to know who you are when you're by yourself? And that's a hard thing to know. Most people don't. Most people don't understand who they are as an individual, that they have a hard time with the music off. If you have a hard time driving with the music off, then you may have a hard time being home by yourself.
Yeah. And
being able to quote unquote rest or get away from the groups and the meetings that have gotten you where you are right now. If you think about it, the times that we don't feel like doing that stuff, it usually means that we've gotten to a place where we've lost gratefulness for it. When we lose gratefulness for our meetings and for the places that we've gone that have gotten us where we are right now, it usually means that we're just like looking at it and we're like, this is good and everything, but I don't think that I need this anymore. By that point, you start losing what it means to be where you are right now.
Wow.
And that's a scary place to be also. That's why, like, my answer to this isn't necessarily this or that. It's more of like this, it's like a growing experience.
Yeah.
It's early on, you beat yourself to the ground. You make yourself busy. And the reason why you make yourself so busy is because you're still trying to build the habits.
Right.
The habits of a secondhand nature, if you would, of when I'm home by myself, my secondhand nature is that I just go to sleep, or I read, or I meal prep, or I do something healthy, or I go online, look for an article, or do something, or even just sit back and watch a movie, and one movie, and I just like make it that, and I go outside and I go do something. You have to make that a secondhand nature. If your secondhand nature is that you lean towards heathenism and you lean towards like just being a selfish individual and not really doing anything productive with yourself, then you prove right there and then that you have not practiced enough to make it a real habit by that point. And that's why I think that it's important to find out where you're at, but you shouldn't do that early on. Doing that early on, trust me, you are going to snap back to old behavior because that's who we are.
Yeah.
To be able to allow yourself to burn yourself out with things that are good, it usually means that you're filling in your life with nothing but good things. That's a good thing. By that point, what's happening is that you're starting to, or maybe in the middle of, creating new habits for yourself. So then when you are by yourself, it would be something good, not necessarily negative. And so when people are asking, it's like, do you really need to be going to, that many meetings a week? Well, it depends. What are your habits like? It all depends on like what it is that you do with or without those meetings.
Right.
Like what does it make you do when you go to those meetings? Do you feel better about yourself and you feel motivated to not do things that are selfish and lame? Or do you go to those meetings and you come after, you just feel all drained and like tired and everything of the sort? It's like, did it add to your life? Did it take away from your life? I've heard this story from Miggs before. He says he had a sponsee. He would go to a meeting. He would have this conversation with the sponsee. The sponsee says, I'm trying to spend more time with my daughter, and I've just got opportunities to be able to hang out with her, so I can go with her on Tuesday to go to her soccer practice. Miggs like, that's awesome. That's what recovery is all about. Tuesday comes around. He goes to the meeting, and that guy shows up. And he walks up to him and says, what are you doing here? He's like, I got to be at my meeting. He says, no, you got to go and be with your daughter. Recovery is not being in these meetings all day long. Recovery is about being able to do what you have to do, the things that make you who you are as a human being. These meetings isn't life. This is not where life exists. Life exists out there, so you can bring it back in here and say, guess what? I'm living life. It's really awesome. All right, guys, see ya. And being able to get people to understand life's out there. It's not in these rooms. And that's exactly what I feel about Bible study. Bible study is you bring people together to learn something, like a huddle in a football game. Huddle together, talk about what's going on, what the plan is, how we're going to execute, and then break, go play the game. The life is not about the huddles. And I think a lot of people really do believe that life's about the huddles. And it's like, that's a backwards way of thinking about things. I understand the intensity behind it, because people have to understand, no, we have to be in the huddle. We have to plan. We have to know what we're doing, because some people are going to be like, nah, I don't need the huddles. I'm good with over here. It's like, if you're not in the huddles, you're not going to understand where we're going and what we're going to do. So I understand the intensity behind it, but what I don't understand is the longevity of it.
Right.
Like, why are we staying in these huddles as long as we do, and prioritizing the huddles over playing the game? So then it ends up becoming this kind of like, where I believe it should be. It'll get to a point to where at one point, for a lot of people, it starts off with 90% of your life feels like the meetings, right? And 10% feels like the life, right? Eventually what ends up happening is I believe that those begin to change. Over time, it becomes from 90-10 to 80-20 to 50-50. And eventually it goes down to about 40-60, 30-70. And I think 30-70 is a decent balance. Because if you're living your life 70% and 30% of your life is coming to the huddles, by that point, it's a good place. But there are people that when they find their purpose, they find their purpose being at the meetings. And by that point, because they're happy about it, they're going there like, I love the meetings. I love to meet the newcomers. I love this stuff. It's my favorite thing in the world. That's wonderful. By that point, you found your purpose. If you're miserable doing that, then you're not in your purpose. You can't stand your life. You're just making yourself do something that your sponsor told you to do a long time ago, and you just held on to it because you feel comfortable doing the thing that's easiest to you now because it's become part of your habit.
Yeah.
That's different than being able to go to a meeting because you like it, or go to a meeting because you're forced to. Understanding where you're at and how you actually like it or dislike it, or what your relationship with it is, that's really important to me. But say, for example, it isn't that. It isn't I'm going to the meetings, because it's not like the meetings are the only place that you can find, you can actually get service going.
Right.
Because that's what the biggest, the biggest advocation comes from for going to meetings. It's for the newcomers. It's for the newcomers. I believe that and I understand that, but it's not to say there isn't struggling people out there.
Right.
There are people out there that need to see some people that are actually going to be living their lives to the fullest. So who's to say that the place that you're going to be going to doesn't have somebody who needs that example in their life? I needed people in recovery to be able to teach me about life. I needed that. I wasn't going to the rooms to find that. I was finding them in random places, hanging out at church, going to places in which people were just being themselves and saying like, oh wow, I really like that. What is that? It's recovery. That's what that is. And so again, it's about kind of like figuring out where you are and who you are and where you're landing on these things. So you're sitting at what, 3 months now, 4 months?
160 days.
What is that?
I don't know.
I don't know
either.
either.
A little under 6 months.
All right, cool. So you're coming up about half a year in your recovery time. Where do you think you're at right now? Like where are you at in your head when you think about going to meetings and time management, and what does it feel like right now?
Right now, I definitely know. I'm very. I like to believe that I'm self-aware, right? Because I just like to believe that, and I understand that I'm very impulsive. Yeah. Super impulsive. Yeah. Still have that, and so I not only seek counsel, but I follow it. Right? Yeah, because it takes a village to raise a king, as they say, and a queen, right? So before, I wouldn't listen to my village and just do whatever I want, and that's why heavy lies the head that wears the crown, and I squandered all my opportunities. But in this case, right when I got to my sober living, out of 90 days in treatment, and I go to my sober living, I'm there for like a week or a week and a half. And then OCC is one of the only colleges in California that has residential living, community colleges. Yeah. That has this brand new facility for residential living. And I got an ad saying, oh, there's new apartments available. I was like, screw the sober living. I want to go straight to those places right now. I want to be with the students. And my dad, my mom, and my case manager and therapist were like, well, let's talk about this. Yeah. Right? And I was like, all right, let's talk about it. And what ended up happening is I still live in my sober living. Yeah. Right. But I just needed to hear, like, what are you, crazy? You said you were going to do 90 days in, what did I just say? Sober living. Yeah. 2 weeks ago. And now you want to change? Think about what you're doing. Yeah. You're being impulsive. Yeah. Right. And time management too. So check this out. Today, this is why we're bringing it up. Yeah. Today or last week, I started thinking, I don't know if I want to do four days a week in IOP. Yeah. I think I'm good on 3. Yeah. Because really, I really do think now I really do. So sure. Because it's like I said, not only do I have IOP in the morning, but I have those meetings in the afternoon that I have to go to. Right. So it's like now it's just meeting, school, and more meetings, and I'm like, okay, let's chill it out. Let's drop one day. And I talk to my counsel. And they said, okay, yeah, we're okay with you dropping one day. What day do you want to drop? I want to drop Monday. So that way I could just have my weekend, wake up, do homework or chill or do whatever I want from 9 to 12 and then go to school and have Monday. So now it's just Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday my alumni. But what I'm saying is I'm trying to figure it out, dude. Like but I'm not figuring it out on my own or making decisions on my own, because I know that I'm hanging out when I'm alone. I'm hanging out with the person that I last got loaded with myself, right? And that person doesn't make good decisions, so I have to accept the counsel from other people. That's what I would recommend now that I'm speaking it out. As to how to manage your time, or even consider adding and subtracting things in your time slots.
Yeah, I think it's really great, because by that point, what you're understanding more than anything, at least in this point in your life, is that you can't trust yourself that much, you know? And anybody who's wise understands that concept. Anybody. I don't care how long you've been sober. I don't care how long you've been on this earth. You need the wise counsel of others that you can trust. And it's those people that are usually a bit smarter than you, a little more grounded than you are, maybe people that are in leadership, people that you've understood to be in that position for yourself. Those people are vital for yourself. It gets to a point to where you don't need them for everything, because what's happening is like you're slowly but surely learning what it means to add things into your life and being able to say, I'm actually pretty good at that. I can actually do that on my own. But there are other things that you've proven in your life where like, I'm not really good at that stuff. There are fewer things that I need, but those things I know I need from other people. I need to go up to a chief from some of my best friends and ask them, hey, this is what's going on right now. What do you think? And it's important for me to kind of figure out what it is that they think about things, because I can see what I can see. I'm completely blind to certain things in my life that only other people can see. And because they're watching me and they're watching the story play out, it's hard to see as they say, the forest from the trees. I can't really see every single specific detail in my life. And I'm a highly self-aware individual, that there are still things that I'm not taking note on because I'm not paying attention to it. I'm paying attention to certain things that I'm really proud of and some things that make me feel ashamed. But there's things on the in-between that I'm not really noticing that other people can. And when they notice it, it's important for them to point it out, first of all, or two, for me to be open enough so they can be pointing these things out. And again, these are people I need to be a little bit wiser than me, people that are a few steps ahead of myself. And so, but again, what ends up happening is you get into these opportunities of moving forward, and it should be scary, because every time you move forward, it's an opportunity to succeed or to fail. How much you succeed or how much you fail is all really determined on how much of a risk you're willing to take. And you get to the next stage in your life, living situation, that brings a lot of different things with it. It brings a new environment. It brings new freedoms sometimes. It brings a different type of accountability. And it brings a certain type of expectation as well. That's a lot to come with one stage of your life. That's why certain things like people moving from one area to another area, it can be a drastic change for the better or for the worst. You get people that have been out here for I know stories of people that have been out here sober for 4-5 months, and they go back home they come here to California to get sober, and they go back home to a different state, and they week 1 just completely destroy all of their sobriety. Week 1. And you're like, oh man, just a living situation can screw that much up? Yes, absolutely. And this is the reason as to why it's what are you building for yourself? What people can you and can you not be around that's going to allow you to either one, succeed or to fail? And again, that has a lot to do with how big of a risk it is and how big of a jump it is and a step forward that it is. Those things are it's weird because it's not like a formula. It's not like you can tell somebody guaranteed this will happen and this will happen. When I talk to people about say going back home or they've only been a month sober and they're just trying to get a job, I'm really honest with people. I'll tell them statistics are against you. You're gonna relapse according to statistics, but you're more than welcome to work against that. And my hope is that you do. My expectation is pretty low, but my hope is high because I've seen that happen. I've seen people that have gotten 30 days done with rehab, and they're killing it. And there's some people that have they don't go to AA, they don't go to NA, and they're killing it. And there's certain people that are I just prayed to God and He took my craving away, and now it's gone forever. Stories like that where you're what is that though? And another thing too is if people say that AA is has the highest statistics of people getting sober. It's well, it's one of the only programs,
the longest standing one.
And given the facts, it's actually not it's not even a high percentage of a high rating of what it means to be sober. Because when people when people relapse, they don't usually come back to AA. So
yeah.
like, it's not like you have statistics about that because it's all anonymous as well.
Show me the data.
Yeah, it's all anonymous. You can't show data. So it's like when people say stuff like that, it's like that's still an ignorant statement. What you can say though is that it's primarily focused on what it means to be sober, 100%. So it's like if you want to learn something, you want to go to the best school for law, you'll probably go to Harvard. It's because I want to go here because they specialize in this. That's why if anybody's like, I'm struggling with addiction, I'll shoot them straight to AA immediately. Because I'm like, they specialize in that. You're going to get some help there. Will you be successful? Oh, that has everything to do with you, not them. Has nothing to do with what they have to offer. People can get sober on their bed. They can get sober in jail. They can get sober in the middle of the woods. They can get sober around a lot of people. They can get sober by themselves. They can get sober in AA. They can get sober in rehab. It doesn't matter. You can get sober anywhere. The only thing that you need is willingness. If you have the willingness to be able to grow and to be able to learn and to be able to get some discipline in your life, then you're going to be fine. But it has everything to do with, again, how open you are for making the steps forward and how much courage you have to be able to make steps forward and say, I got this, it's going to be okay. I still have to hold on to my tools, tools of accountability, tools of discipline, tools of being humble, tools of learning, all these things. If I can carry these with me, then I'm going to be all right. And that's why it's important to me, at least, to be able to get people to understand you have the power. You do. You have the power to succeed. You have the power to fail. I don't believe in victim mentality. I don't treat anybody like a victim ever. It's like, I don't care what happened to you either. It could be straight up like you are an actual victim. I won't treat you like one. There's no way. Because I need you to understand you had the power to make yourself fail, which means that you have the power to make yourself succeed. That is an important thing for everybody to know. That's a power literally in your hands. If anybody takes that from you, it's easy for you to be able to blame the world around you and not try anymore because it's not your fault. I don't want people to think like that because I don't want to think that about myself. If I think that about myself, like it's not my fault, it's my mom's fault, it's my ex's fault, it's my this fault, that fault, the government's fault. If I start thinking like that, you better believe I'm not going to try because what's the point? If I'm not in charge of what's happening in my life and I'm just kind of floating with the wind of the world and they can do whatever they want with me, what's the point of me trying? It's always going to be me coming up third place because I'm not in charge. It's a rigged race. And that I don't believe life is like that. I believe life is very much in the place of, no, you're in control of what that looks like. So it's like, oh man, what should I do? I'm doing so many different things in my sobriety and my recovery. What am I going to do? It doesn't matter. By that point, it's just like whatever it is that you choose, you chose it. As long as you can understand that, then wherever you go from here, I decided to not go to the meeting tonight. Great. That means that you're going to decide what you're going to do with that empty space of time. If you get to that place where you're thinking, I just stayed home and then all of a sudden, I don't know, man, don't start talking like that. You made a big boy decision to say, I'm going to stay home. Therefore, you're going to make the big boy decision to be able to say, because I stayed home, what am I going to do with that time? If you find out when you do stay home that you actually are not a big boy about your decision after that, you should probably not stay home anymore. You should probably keep going there. But that requires an honesty. And that's why this is so self-accountable. The self-accountability is like at a all-time high at that point. Because like if you're staying home and you're not honest with yourself and you start slipping, by that point your program means nothing. Because your program is all about showing up and everybody else keeping you accountable and how sober you can stay, right? Well, they say it all the time, relapse happens before the relapse. Mental relapse, emotional relapse, all these different things before you physically snap. Well, what are you doing with those off times? If you don't understand what you're doing at those off times and you're not that self-aware, then chances are you're going to start slowly slipping to that point where you will eventually relapse. And this is the reason as to why I believe that if you don't have God in your corner, who is your only accountability, and your Bible and your prayer and your connection to Him and your phone calls to your brothers and sisters in Christ, if you don't have that kind of belief within yourself, conviction, well then you're going to fly off the handle. You have nothing. What do you have? Your program? Your program's not going to keep you sober, I guarantee you that. And this is the reason why God and higher power is woven into the program, is because that's the thing that's actually going to get you sober outside of your work on your addiction. Outside of your work on your addiction and your sobriety, there's a whole entire life to be lived. Everything else is after that. This is the reason as to why the Bible hits on everything else. We barely hit anything on addiction in there. Anything that has to do with mind-altering substances is very, very small as well. It hits on everything else. So if you're not working on everything else and the only thing you're working on is your fear of is relapsing, then you're constantly pointing to the one and only problem that you're ever going to have. It's the ideas of laws of attraction. If laws of attraction have everything to do with being able to think and speak it into existence, if the only thing you speak into existence is your addiction and your relapse, that inevitable relapse because your recovery is your sobriety is so important, well then inevitably it's going to happen again. That's the only world you live in. How big is your world? If it's small, You think about a high school student, their tiny little world. What's their world? Everything that happens in tiny little high school, right?
Yeah.
In the span of 6 hours of their life on a daily basis, that's the only thing that exists in their high school, the little tiny high school world. I see that happening a lot in people that are in those rooms as well. The only world that they live in is what happens in those rooms, and everybody else is wrong, and that's incorrect. The way to think about this is like, no, this place got you started like a boot camp. It got you started to get you into the experience of the rest of the world, so you can come back to saying, I know where I'm at now based off of my first steps of where I was in my sobriety and recovery. That was necessary for me to be where I am right now, but it is not life. It itself is not everything. What's everything are the tools that it gave me and how I could adapt those tools to everything else in my life. Because you can run a 12 steps on anything. You can run a 12 step on your addiction to, pornography, of shopping addictions, work, all those things. You can run that 12 steps on anything. There's so many people inside of a program that say, I wish my mom would run the 12 steps, and she's not even an addict. Right. I wish that other people would run this the 12 steps. What they're understanding at that point is that 12 steps is not an addict thing. It's literally drug out the Bible. Like, everything is written in is biblical, which means that it's just put in a place to be able to say, listen, you need help with this one thing, just like anger management, you help with this one thing, let's work on this one thing. But that's not life. Mm-hmm. It's not like all of a sudden your life is just going to be about anger. Mm-hmm. No, your life is so much more than that. This thing was just kind of holding you back. It's like a rock. As I say in the Drop the Rock, it's the rock that's holding you back from being able to move forward. Once you drop that rock, then you're going to be able to experience life for what it is, and you're going to realize it's not just this. And most people know that. You're sitting in a hospital you broke your leg, you go into the hospital for recovery, right? The point is not that you stay in the hospital for the rest of your life. The point is that you get recovered so that you can go out and start running again, and you can start doing something again. And that's the point. So what's the thing holding you back? My addiction's been holding me back. All right, cool. Let's get you to a place where your addiction is not holding you back anymore, so you can start running again. Yeah. So you can start doing something. And then when you get to that point where you're running and you're like, it feels like a lot. Okay, slow down.
Yes.
And so that's where it gets to the point where people are like, but if I slow down, and that's another fear I see happening a lot, if I slow down, I will relapse. Well, that depends. How are you talking about that? Mm-hmm. How do you see that truly? I hear people all the time. It's crazy to me, and I have other people in recovery who agree with this. They say, when somebody says, I had one drink, and then right after that, I called the Connect and started doing meth the same night. Yeah. To these people that I've talked to before that are in recovery, they're like, that's crazy. That's not me. That's not my life. I don't do that. I think the reason why people do that is because they leave it as an option. They leave it there as an option, as like, this is something that I can do. If I open that door, then I'm opening that door all the way. I think that's a reservation you left in your head. Like, it's just because you talk to your ex doesn't mean that all of a sudden now you got to go get high. Yeah. It's just that you had that reservation in the back of your head as an option because you talk about it so much. Mm-hmm. You talk about, oh man, I know that if I do this, then this will happen and this will happen. Stop living in that world. Like, let's move forward. What does life actually look like for you right now? And again, that has a lot to do with filling in my life with all this stuff.
Yes.
I want to slow it down a little bit. That's good. Slow it down. That's fine. But what are you doing with that time? Are you really resting, or are you just giving yourself an opportunity to go backwards? And trust me, I really do believe that has a lot to do with being, one, self-aware, but then having other people around you that are very aware of who you are as well. Yes. And sometimes it's not the sponsor. Honestly, the sponsor knows little about you sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes the sponsor only knows what you tell them. And what you tell them usually is very much connected to just what it is that you're doing when it comes to addiction. But outside of that, it's just about nothing. So it's like there's people that are your sponsor. It's like you're only really supposed to be talking to them about your addiction. You're not supposed to really be talking to them about your relationships and your financial situations and all those other things, because who's to say that they're good at any of those? Right. The only thing they're good at is being sober. So again, it's like you call your sponsor so they can help you stay sober. That's it, right? You call your friends and other mentors and financial accountants and stuff like that to help with other things in your life. You go to your pastor to help you with your spirituality. Why would you go to somebody who's just good at being sober? Unless that person is like a really amazing person, then they can help you with all kinds of different things. But that person isn't necessarily supposed to be your everything. And that's why by the end of the day, it's, well, who are you talking to about your life? Like, what's really important about your life, and what do you think is the things that are pushing you forward or holding you back? And that's why I find it to be really important to be, again, self-aware, but also having multiple people around you, not just your sponsor, multiple people around you that you respect and put on a high pedestal of leadership to be able to tell you where you're at and whether they're comfortable with where you're going or not. But that's why I truly believe that once you understand what recovery is, after that is being able to understand what it means to manage your time. Because if you don't, then you can very easily fall into this idea of sobriety. I'm sober and I'm busy and I'm miserable. Right. And it's just like, that's an ugly place to be for anybody.
Yes. And you know, just when you said how to build your community, like build the people around you that you can lean on, right? Like, right, Christ, but also like your leaders, not leaders, but people that you respect that you could see counts on. Yeah. That is how I noticed that reached a new level of maturity
Yeah.
in rehab, because when I was 22 and I went to rehab, I was still very immature. So I would not let anybody in.
Yeah.
No friends, nothing, right? And especially if they were older.
Yeah.
If they were older, I was like, oh my God, they're so old. Like, I don't want to be their friends, right? You understand? But this time at 27, my maturity is in a different spot. So now, like, if I meet someone that's way older, 50, 60, I make friends with them. I have the emotional, intimate skills, at least enough to make friends with those people, right? And whether it's self-serving or not, thank God I did, because now those are closer friends, right? And they've been able to counsel me. Now, I don't only have a sober coach, I have a case manager, I have a therapist, and I have a friend who's also a therapist, and they're all over the age of 40, right? And then I have my dad. So it's like, and mom, right? But like all these people, but now they're my friends. They're not just people I look to use for a better serving. They're like friends, which I never thought was possible. So so this is why I'm touching on this, because I understand how it feels maybe for some people in recovery sometimes. First, we were already isolating so aggressively. So it's hard to make friends, period. But let's say you're a younger person and you're looking at someone and you want what they have, but you're like, I can't be friends with that person. You know, I'm not saying don't think that way, but I'm just saying I completely understand where you're coming from. I was like that too. But if you can maybe be open-minded to creating those relationships, then it would be very not only selfish, but selfless, because it'll save your life and you'll be able to save other people's lives.
Exactly. And that word friend is a really powerful word, because usually friends come with, good friends at least, come with honesty. And they come with that honesty to be able to talk about things, to be able to express certain things, to be able to listen and actually take counsel in. People like authority figures, it's hard to take counsel in. They could say something, you'd be like, I don't want to listen to anything you say, I don't respect you. When it comes down to friends, though, you take in what they say because you believe that they care for you, you believe that they're there for you. And so all those things, there's like, it's almost like I chose you to be that person. So when it becomes a friendship, that's a powerful thing to have. And so being able to get to that place, it really has a lot to do with honesty. I believe at the crux of all of it, everything that it is that I'm saying, because I can feel all of my 2, 3, 5 year people that's sober for that long. I could feel them right now staring at me saying, one, what do you know anything about sobriety? And I usually have a few words for that, but in the long run, what I think is really important, I think that most people can't argue with, is the fact that if you're not being honest, you won't be able to go anywhere. Honesty is like the bedrock of all of it. So if you decided not to go to the meeting that night and you went home and you lied about what it is you do at that time, you're not in recovery. By that point, you're still in sobriety, and it's just about the time, it's just about the date, it's just about your sober app and what it tells you. But at least I didn't relapse. I hate that. I hate when people say that. I understand why it's powerful, but at the same time, it's just like, that's not really that impressive. I'm sorry, but like by the end of the day, at least I didn't relapse. It's like, dude, you just yelled at somebody and like completely crushed them and said this and that over your sober living just because you thought that they stole something from you. At least I didn't relapse. Like, no, you caused damage still. You didn't have to be high or under the influence to be able to destroy lives still. It's not about that anymore. You're beyond that. It's getting to a place in which you understand, honestly speaking, where are you? I'm still kind of falling short. Great. Work on it. That's it. That's what it looks like. It looks like being honest with yourself and saying, I still got to work on it. Humble enough to be able to say, I still need to work on that. And having people around you that can humble you and say, no, bro, you're not there. You just did this, and that. Come on, dude, don't lie to me. And you sitting there, you can smile and be like, all right. That's the relationships you want. The ones that can be honest with you so you can say, yeah, you're right. I do need to work on that. You hurt my feelings for sure, but I trust you. And I don't think that you did it because you hate me or because you want to belittle me. I think you said it because you care about me. Those relationships will keep you afloat. But again, it's because honesty is at the crux of it. It's at the center of that. If you don't have honesty inside of your program, you don't have honesty within yourself and your recovery and your sobriety, you're not going to be getting anywhere. And that's why I really do believe that people can test out the waters of what they can and cannot do and what they should be shoving in their schedules and not. But as long as they have honesty. If they have honesty in the middle of it, then they can be honest with. It's almost like what you're doing is it's a science experiment. You're seeing what works and what doesn't, and then you should do that. You should be asking questions. You should be seeing what you're capable of, not capable of doing, what your limits are. You should know what those things are. You get close and close and close. You're like, oh my God, I almost relapsed tonight. That's good. I'm glad that you figured that out, because you need to know where your line is right now. And that's why when people go out to go see their families in other states and stuff, I'm like, I'm glad that you're doing that. because you're going to find out where you're at for real.
Right.
And that could be at the cost of you relapsing, but you'll come back and be like, totally like went on a 2-week, 1-month binge, and you came back like, oh my God, that was like the worst run ever. It's like, great. Now you found out something about yourself. What was it? I can't stand my mom and she makes me want to relapse. Great. So now you got to stay away from your mom for a while now. See, knowing those things comes at a cost, but it only requires for you to be honest to be able to see those things. Instead of saying something like, oh, the reason why I relapsed because I was away from all you guys. It's like, I doubt it. I think it was something else that caused that. But again, you have to be honest about that. And being able to be surrounded with people that are honest with you, that's important. And again, I believe all those experiments are important. It's about being more self-aware. Who are you? That's most people's problem in general. The reason as to why they have addictions, not just substance abuse, all addictions, is because they don't know who they are. And if they did know who they were not comfortable with it. And that's why they go towards these solutions, is because they don't like who they are. So how about you figure out who you are, stop being terrified of that person, honest about what you're terrified about, and then being able to talk to people about how can I work at this, because I don't want to be terrified of myself anymore. I don't want to be lost as to who it is that I am. Can you help me with that? That type of honesty gets us to solutions. But instead, people just mask it up with meetings, mask it up with all these things, mask it up with act as if, and then eventually push comes to shove, and you're acting as if didn't help you with anything. You're still acting, and now the real stuff came out, and you relapse. And so then how it becomes this thing, or like, where did you learn? How honest are you now? And who are you standing at this point? All of these steps and everything that's put together, they're made for people that are looking, I'm desperate for anything, and I really just want to complicate something simple. The simplicity of it it was as simple as the DARE program. Just say no. That's simple, and that's actually the solution. The solution is just say no. It's complicated because we as human beings are complicated, and we like things to be complicated. So when God says, I like obedience over sacrifice, what he's saying is, I want you to just say no. Obedience. I just want you to do the right thing. Okay? I'd rather you do that than for you to sit here and say, sorry, and I didn't understand it, I didn't get it, then I understand now. It's like, you missed me with all that. I'd rather you be obedient, because obedience gets you the solution of actually going forward and getting it done. But see, the problem that people have with obedience is they don't understand. I'm doing these things, but I don't understand why. That's why when somebody can tell you, mom can tell you, just do this. Why? Just do that. Why? It could be the greatest advice in the world. Why? And what ends up happening is that we end up having to go through it ourselves, and that's the only way we learn. That's not true. We'll learn through obedience. We just refuse to, because we want to complicate things. So 12 steps is longer than it should be, and more complicated than it should be. But the only reason why it is because we as individuals, as human beings, want complicated things. We want it to be special. We want it to be unified. We want it to be us. And that slows us down. But again, that's because we're not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with who it is that we are and where we're going, what we need to do. It's just like, dude, let's just stop being around the bush. You're a coward. Can we deal with that? If you're honest about it, it's like, yeah, you're right, I am a coward. You're a liar. Can we deal with that? You're a bum. You're lazy. If you can deal with those things, those harsh realities, then we can actually start moving forward from there. Yes. If you keep on being in denial of all those things, I'm not in any of those things, I'm actually a good person, and everything I do has always been with a good heart. It's like, the more you lie to yourself like that, the longer it's going to take for us to get to a solution. Because the solution's behind the honesty, not how you can dress it up or how you can avoid it. It's about getting to the actual truth of it and then being able to work past it. Once you have your obedience in lock, you will then understand. It's obedience before understanding, not the other way around. Yeah, people trying to describe the door, as we say, describe the door instead of opening it and going through it. Right. So they sit there, psychology is sitting there describing the door. You have this problem and that problem and all these things, and this is the reason why. It's because it's connected to your mom in this specific situation. Oh. And you're sitting there in therapy for years and years and years, and you haven't really made a step forward in doing the scary thing because we already know what the problem is. You're too scared to be obedient. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do it because you're a bum, because you're a coward, because, you're a liar. That's the reason why. Just go through the door. Once you go through the door and get done what you need to get done, you will understand why you're doing it. Trust me. You're out there and you're doing the thing over and over again. Eventually be like, looking around, and with experience, you're like, oh, I understand now why I'm doing this. Right. See, at least you started doing something. You started doing something versus the guy over there that says, I'm not doing it until you explain it to me. That guy's wasting time. And that's who we all are. The Bible is as long as it is, which it's not really that long, but it is as long as it is because we are complicated individuals. Go back and read Genesis. It's the same dumb story over and over. Humanity sucks at living and God's the only one that's great at it. That's it. That's all Genesis is about. When we begin to understand that specifically, it's like, well, why are we telling the story over and over? Because God knows us. He knows we're looking for the way out. He's looking for like, oh, you know what? I really relate to David. No, you relate to all of them. You relate to all of them. They're all just like you. But you wanted that special little person that you can stand out and say, I'm just like that person right there, because you want it more complicated than it is. It's actually very simple. You don't put God first. And because you don't put God first, you make your life so much more complicated to the point where you say, I want 10 steps before me and the actual solution, please. I want 12 steps between me and the solution. It's like, well, there's actually only one step. It's like, no, I'd rather it be 12 because I need to elongate this. I need to make this longer. And I need to make it more complicated because I'd rather not. I'm too scared to just stop, to just say no. And that's why when it comes down to it, we need to be honest about who it is that we are as individuals if we want to make any progress going forward. And it never stops. It never stops.
Nope.
You'll always be honest. You have to, at least if you want progress.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't want progress, then you'll stay the same. And you don't have to be honest at all.
Wow, you heard it from Anthony himself.
Yeah, right.
No, but for real, I mean, it's the truth. It's a simple program, but we complicated it ourselves. I've heard you say that. I've heard multiple people explain the same thing, and everything you said today was very powerful. And for those of you listening, like if you know somebody that has not been honest with themselves or struggling to be honest with themselves, or if you know someone, maybe consider telling them. Maybe not continue to allow them to be the victim or play the victim, or you yourself play the victim. And there was a lot of powerful nuggets that we talked on this podcast. And Anthony, I appreciate you. It's been a great time talking today. If anyone likes the show, please share it. Also, if you want to come to Sunday's Magic House event at Magic Warehouse, it's 1567 West Embassy Street, Anaheim, California. Other than that, we appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. You got anything else to say, Anthony? Yeah, I just redone the website for setfreeanaheim.com. Yes.
So now they can go to it and see like the full schedule, our calendar and stuff, so we don't have to just keep going through the same things over and over again.
Okay.
All of our links are on there, podcasts on there, the like I said, the calendar's on there. So if you want to hang out with us during the week and go to our Bible studies and learn some things and have community or Sunday nights, all that, then you can go to setfreeanaheim.com to get more information on that, including where it's at, times, stuff like that, and it's cool.
Oh yeah, and we also opened our new Instagram, so Set Free Speech Instagram.
Yeah.
If you want to follow us there, we're going to start posting content. Zoe was here recording. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks, Zoe.
And other than that, it's been a blessing. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah,
I hope
you
guys have a great day, and we will see you next week.
Booyah.